And you're live. So got I didn't get a new microphone. I've had this microphone for a little while, but I'm kind of testing out using it. So I'm wearing the headphones right now just so I can hear what's going on. So let me know if you guys can hear audio or not. I see there's one person on. If this one person on, just let me know if you can hear or not so I can take the headphones off. Um, and then also if yeah, if the audio sounds okay, maybe you guys could be letting me know what's going on with that. I know that just screwing around with it right now, when my fan comes on my MacBook, it is picking it up. So maybe I need to dial the volume down a little bit. So I've got controls right here, a little PreSonus Studio 26C to be able to control it. So um, yeah, just kind of some changes. Hopefully, we'll see. I'm in my basement of the new house, and so the lady who originally lived here had a sewing studio down in here. So that's what's going on with all this crazy storage behind me and stuff. But a little coffee talk this morning here, Saturday. The shit, I don't even know what day it is. The Saturday, my phone's not telling me what day it is. Anyway, sometime in September 2020. But just wanted to do a little update on the Impinda. So I have been EDCing the Impinda um, the entire time that since I received it back from Reeve Knives. And gosh, I've been so busy. I can't remember if it's been 1 week or 2 weeks, just craziness. Oh, you hear? Awesome. Good. Okay, in that case, I'm taking off is the volume okay? Maybe just let me know. Um, or in the comments if you guys aren't watching this live, I'm gonna take these headphones off. Just so because it's like reverberating for me, so yeah, hopefully it doesn't sound that shitty for you guys. But yeah, so I have been carrying the Impinda every day and using it as my primary user every day. Starting to show just a little bit of very faint, just kind of rubbing against my tool bags while I'm wearing it at work. But yeah, I I don't really ever watch my videos, so like I'm not 100% sure what exactly I have and haven't said, but I just kind of wanted to, all things considered, try to put some kind of positive spin on the whole thing. So just bottom line, bottom line is for me is not really worth the 450, especially considering the comparison to the other Chris Reeve knives offering. Number one, in my opinion, being, gosh, personal preference comes into so much personal preference comes into this, just as far as like aesthetics, hand size, all that kind of stuff. So it's hard to say what's valuable and what's not. But for me, unfortunately, I'm burdened by the aesthetic parts, aspects of like my EDC stuff. So like that weighs heavily on it, which is like a fucking shitty thing to say or admit, but it is really kind of true. September 26th. So um yeah. So for me, number one, period, is the Sabinza. I really like the aspects, just the whole simplicity of the Sabenza, but it also is like it's not just so simple that it's like, oh gosh, just like a super traditional folder, or like what's a good example of a really simple knife that just aesthetically doesn't do it for me because it's just overly simple. I can't think the Canadian company, the Shock Skaha, the Skaha 1, Skaha 2, the Gentleman Jack. That I totally want to check out a Gentleman Jack. My local, or not local, but closest that high-end shop that I've mentioned, they've got a bunch of Medfords, and I asked them to please get a Gentleman Jack in, just so I could check it out. But yeah, like the Skaha 2, that's a perfect example. It's like it just doesn't have the design cues that you know take you from 3 to 6 at least. So like I just Yeah, so I do suffer from the whole aesthetics point of view. Sabenza 21 over Impinda. Well, I mean, aesthetically for sure. I mean, this is not a good looking knife. Like in my opinion, it's kind of a bummer because this shit's backwards. I wish it wasn't flipped around. Plus, then you could see my Virgin Islands I love beer shirt. Can you read it? No, it is backwards, but 4 letters. We can tell what it says. Um, but God, this is an ugly knife. You know what I mean? It's all things considered. Um, but it's got like super minimalism going on with the design. So in a lot of ways, that overshadows the just the fact that the lines aren't great on this knife. It's just too I don't want to say retro, but just like it harkens to like a 90s Gerber that is just like I don't know that that's a design that can come back. You know, it's like a lot of parts of like 90s stuff could come back as far as like, clothing, maybe even car designs, which that would be a terrible idea too, but I just don't think knife is one of those things for me. Um but yeah, that said, um the aesthetics don't do much for me. That's just kind of all there is to it. But I do love I mean, I would say all things considered, very Spartan. Yeah, less CRK. Right, I mean, there is no Harsey design that I like. There really just isn't. That's all there is to it. Like, I can't find a single one of, the designs that I'm like, "Oh, I like that." Um, but that's just me, you know? Um, but I would say all things considered, like, just like the heart of great minimalist art for me is like a minimum outcome with maximum like thought, ideas, effort put into the thing. That's what I like for minimalism. So like a good example would be like a perfect sphere or a perfect cube or something like that, right? It's like that's very minimal, but to get a perfect cube or a perfect sphere, it takes maximum effort, so that's a hey, hey. Yeah, so I'm planning on turning the camera around a little bit more, just because by request, people have just said, "Hey, man, back in the day, you used to be an OG, like whatever, with the camera facing around backwards." And I think I'm just gonna go for that. So it's just like fuck it, because I didn't like I didn't like the vain aspect of the camera facing forward. I kind of was like, you know what, it should be about what I'm talking about, what I'm reviewing. So like but I guess, I'm just gonna try to get better lighting, a better camera, some all that kind of shit, and so, like, I can do maybe kinda do both. So, that's kind of my thought. Um, but yeah, all things considered, I would call this Chris Reeve Knives' most minimal, you know, piece, all things considered, like, just the what it is, the design, the small amount of parts and pieces that go into it, the not super complex mechanism, right? It's a slip joint. So like everything else aside, that kind of is what it is. Um, next probably would be like the Impinda. I did that last time. The Nkosi, right? So it has it seems to have less parts than like a Sabenza, you know. So I like that. Now, getting to like just kind of discoveries and findings over the last week or so, or however long it's been that have been carrying and using this knife. Um, it's not a whole lot different than what I would have said initially on my last re-unboxing after getting it back from Chris Reeve Knives. Um, but yeah, there's some kind of it's doing like a reverse break-in kind of thing. Like the action. See if you can hear this. I don't know. I can feel it, but I can't really hear it either. So I'm not sure, even though I'm holding it right up against the microphone, if you can hear it. But it's super gritty. And I've tried lubing it. I've tried, jacking with the pivot. I mean, this thing, the tolerances are I would say the nominal tolerances, what they're shooting for is so tight that even just a little bit off, like this one, we know is can screw with those tolerances. So I'm not sure if it's like scraping the spring, which is what I would assume it is, or if it's kind of scraping the internals. Because like you know, uh, oh, by the way, I still haven't got my micrometer. I don't even know exactly what's going on with that. But I'm thinking I'm going to cancel my. I got it on Amazon, which I shouldn't have done. But I think I'm going to cancel that order. It's funny is last time I did that, I ended up getting two of what I ordered, and then contacted them, and they said just keep it. I'm like, okay, whatever. But so I mean, we know that it's off, right? I mean, I can see light through there. When I spoke to the son of the owner at Chris Reeve Knives, uh, he did say that this spring is machined flat, right? It doesn't get skinnier here, so that should be flat as fuck, right? I mean, they're surface grinding that and everything, and no light through here, light through here. So I mean, that basically means the scales are not sitting parallel to each other. Um, so in my mind, there's just all kinds of different things going on. I didn't really notice too on the unboxing. I know I kind of grabbed it and moved it, but man, the tolerances are so tight on this thing that like I really can't necessarily get it dialed in. I can get it where it feels pretty good and not that gritty, but the second the tightest I can get it, there's still some blade play in there. So I'm like, do I go for good action and blade play, or do I? Because I don't really doesn't seem to be an in between at this point. I mean, I'm turning it like 1/100th of a turn, where it's like, oh, I can barely. Okay, I think it moved. I think it moved. And then it's like, and I mean, I'm pretty. It's not like I'm. Oh no, he's probably turning it a 16th, and I don't know. I really am barely turning it, but only way I can get it truly smooth is with a little blade play, right? I mean, that's right. So what I'm thinking is, like I mentioned before, you and I don't know if this is true, but I'll try to. I was going to do a diagram, but then it's like, fuck, I'm not doing a diagram. But yeah, so let's say we'll go extreme. Like the scales are pinched here and a little bit open here. So like they are sitting like this, right? So basically, if when they drill the hole for the pivot into the scales, right? So we'll go even more extreme. They're not drilling the hole like this, right? They're not anticipating the chance of it being a little bit off of uh, nominal, tolerances or whatever. So this hole goes like this, and this hole goes like this, and then you have a really tight pivot trying to weasel in through all this, right? And then when you crank down the pivot and squeeze it, so you got the blade sitting in here too, and the blade's going to be tighter, back towards the back end of the handle and looser here. So I don't know if that's what's happening, if it's grinding around whenever it goes around or what, but because that's to me is what right? Isn't that the only thing that would change if you change the tension on the pivot? I don't know. Or I guess you might maybe could be loosening, but you think if you loosen it, you make this even worse, right? So if you loosen it and it spreads more, uh, that would I don't know, but it's not right. I mean, right? Obviously, so um, and again, like I'm not like super pissed off about it. I'm just kind of like, hey, it's time to put our fucking big boy pants on and somebody understand what's going on, like, and I would think that should be the manufacturer, but I don't know. I don't know. Maybe good enough is where it's at. But so the I assumed, I guess that what really upset me the most initially with all this is I assumed that the none of these issues would be the case, and that was kind of that took a back seat to my desires really what with like purchasing this knife. My desires were what I see is very likely the most durable, well built, and with materials that I really like. Slip joint. You got titanium S30V, really large surface area in the pivot. Um, the Chris Reeve tolerances. A cool machined clip, made in the USA, made in Idaho. So. And those things I got, you get that with it, but at the same time, uh, there's not a manufacturer that offers all those things regardless of the tolerances that I know of. I mean, maybe something that I'm missing. Manly knives out of Italy or something like that, maybe. But and with regard to like say the Hinder Slippy or whatever, I've handled some of those. I just don't dig it. My thing is like that throws the whole minimalist thing out the window. What Hinder knives in general, except for like I can't remember the one that has like the disc thumb opening, is pretty minimal. But there's just fucking 14 screws in the Hinder Slippy, and it's just kind of busy, all things considered. Where this is very minimalist, very durable, all those things that I kind of mentioned that I really wanted. I don't give a shit, honestly, if it's titanium or if it's G10 or carbon fiber or whatever it is. Another good one that I did look at after buying the Impinda, well, actually, probably before and after, is the ZT zero 0206. Anyway, their slip joint, and it's really cool, but it has some no goes, and for me, and the no goes are common, really, really small contact with the blade tang interface to the handle and the pivot caused by a tiny ring of bearings, which I'm just like, why the fuck would you do that? I mean, like, but so that was just like, boop, no go for me because I want this knife to be able to do whatever the fuck I want it to do. A little bit of light prying, some camp chores, whittling. I want to be able to get it all kinds of mucked up with like, you know, food prep shit or whatever I might be doing. Oh yeah, no, I know Bernard for sure. Um, so yeah, I just kind of want this knife to be like kind of a do-all knife, which I do think it is, right? I mean, it covers all the bases of what I was desiring, but it didn't it really misses on the why you buy a Chris Reeve knife, right? It does not have the tolerances of a 450 of a fucking. It, the bummer is like, it really does just seem. I mean, I know this is a shitty thing to say, and it's frowned upon with the fanboys, which I am. Like Jesus. If you look around at my knives that I've got in and around my immediate space, it's a lot of Chris Reeve knives, and because they do offer all those things that I desire, they're starting to more and more lack what a Chris Reeve knives is intended to be and has always been, And I don't know if I mean, really, we have to assume as consumers that something is going on, like it's like maybe a lack of fucks, maybe a lack of understanding, maybe behind in sales, maybe some kind of desire to make more money. I don't really know, but Chris Reeve Knives is like the crazy thing is they still are a standalone. They really are because uh, all those things that I've been mentioning. The way they're designed, like taking taking Chris, human being Chris Reeve, his ideas and his philosophies, and keeping most of that, right? Like the all the things that I've been talking about, minimal design, big wide, surface area in the pivot, um, but kind of like missing out on like his eye for perfection and like his like just like that's my name on that product and yeah, so I don't know. But the real hitch in the get along is like I said, they are a standalone. Um, there's a vintage slip. Is that with the tool steel? There is one of those. I played with it in my local shop, and it's a cool knife. But I don't like all the screws on it. That's all. So I'm a picky person, and that's like why you buy a Chris Reeve knife, and there's one of the reasons why you buy a Chris Reeve knife. So, um, so for me, like there's gonna be trade-offs, you know, and like one of the areas where I'm just not willing to make a trade-off is like price. Like this is a $450 knife, but if you were to go find a custom manufacturer that really could potentially hit the tolerance marks, the nominal like uh tolerances of a Chris Reeve knife, you 450 is like maybe a base price, right? So like knives that come to mind, knives and knife makers that come to mind that maybe are comparable. Um, they'll have a no go, somewhere where Chris Reeve knives, even given all of their shortcomings, can still, for me, uh, make a pass and weasel their way into my rotation or collection selection. So, like, no-goes for me anymore, like, would be fuck, man, Jesus, like, the first thing out of my mouth is gonna be over $700, but fucking for God's sakes, is that really a reasonable place to draw the line? I think fi surely $500 should be like, a reasonable place to draw the line, but I really don't know. I would love to say that 275 should be a good place to draw the line, right? Like, because the Rick Hinder Slippy, and I'm not just talking about slip joints anymore, but just because I've been mentioning that, I'm gonna use it as an example. I believe is 275. So if they could fucking it's like Spyderco, they gotta put a fucking hole in every damn knife. Hinder, like, they're all their knives are very similar, if they could break out of that mold and go for, like, a minimalist design, like, be that their focus, that be their focus, and go for, like, a non-assuming handle shape that doesn't try to dictate how you're gonna hold the knife or different things like that. If they can make that fucking slippy with fucking 30 parts or whatever it has, surely they can machine. Oh fuck, maybe who knows? Maybe maybe mixed into those 30 parts is like a way to make the shit fit together. That's not that this is harder to fit together. I really don't know. But anyway, surely Hinderer should be able to make this for $275 or something very similar to this for $275. Because there's some goofy shit going on with this thing that's just not doesn't need to be there, right? Like they didn't need to try to machine pockets into the handle um, to for the washers to sit in. I can understand why they might do that, but in the process of doing that, they still drop the ball, So I mean, it's like either do it right or don't do it at all, because that's way beside the point of this knife. If you looked in there and saw if the blade is a little bit thinner than like the stock of the S35V and backspring slash backspacer, nobody would give a fuck, but once you start to make those pockets and then they're off, then all of a sudden it's like, well, what the fuck, And then the response you get is, well, it's really hard to make those pockets. Like, well, fucking do it or don't. I mean, that's like all there, in my mind, that's kind of all there is to it. And I think with like the whole idea of like constant quality improvement, they can sneak shit like into it and be like, yeah, we're actually going to get rid of that. Or yeah, we're actually going to whatever it is, little changes are totally okay. And it's weird because like like for Chris Reeve knives, they try like a transparency type of approach, but it doesn't work because they end up having to bullshit you at some point, right? So it might be like a better idea for them to not be so transparent with like their tolerances. But then why the fuck are you buying a Chris Reeve knife? You know what I mean? So I don't really know what the right answer is, but I don't know. I can say, and a long story short is like, I having had everything to go all over again, I would not purchase this knife, but because that's not fucking reality, I would purchase this knife because if I was you guys watching me on YouTube, I would still like roll the dice and be like, it has all of the things that I really want that other companies just don't offer. And once you push over a certain price or certain materials, right? Or certain designs, then I'm suddenly not interested in it. So like a good example would be like a T.A. Davison uh slip joint, right? Fucking beautiful, really cool the way like he insets the his badges and all that kind of stuff. But it's a little overly traditional for me and no pocket clip. That's kind of a deal breaker for me. Like the only knife that I have that I really don't mind that it doesn't have a pocket clip is my I think it's right here actually. I've got my Pelican box right here. So I keep all my knives in Oakley bags because I'm a Oakley sunglasses slut and I burn through them pretty quick. But this is the only knife that for me that I'm cool with not having a pocket clip on it because it's tiny. I can throw this in my back pocket and sit on it and not even notice. But I don't like shit in my front pockets, and I don't like so this slip joint here without a pocket clip would be a no go for me, just because I don't like that sitting in my pocket. But this is funny. If you were to watch my first unboxing video of the Impinda, I was like talking about this knife. Sorry, something's poking me in my chair. I was talking about this knife being like, I was like, oh man, it's like a bear trap. I mean, it snaps shut. It's like, but it is nothing compared to this knife. This knife is very difficult to open and close, which I maybe is on purpose, but I think you'll find with the Impinda that there's a comment here or one or two, maybe even two, where people are like, my Impinda is very similar. It's like it's really hard to dial in the tolerances. Hey, hey, Hungary. I wonder what time it is there. But so yeah, the JE made slippies, they do, but they have an instantaneous no-go for me, and that is made in China. It's not that I'm against China. I don't have any problem with China. I just wow, 7:18 p.m. in Hungary. It's 11:19 here, or maybe 11:18. But that's an instant no-go for me because for some reason I just don't have the best fucking luck with knives, and I'm gonna try to keep it as local as possible. So um, mm, I'm kind of USA or bust, to be honest, at this point. I don't, yeah, no interest to own a Wii or fucking any Riot, any of that stuff. So um, I would consider buying. I was about to say I would consider buying one of the handmade knives because who's the guy who designs the JE? It's Pena, right? I would consider one of those, but fuck, man, aren't they like 700 bucks? So that's just that's really crazy, right? It's like whether you can afford it or not. I I'm too fucking retarded. So like if when I buy a knife, the first thing I go do is go grab a stick and fucking whittle with it. I am not. It's not possible for me to own a knife that I'm not using. That's just all there is to it. Or like a firearm. I could never buy like a sweet. Oh, I saw that with the stop tennising on the hinder. Right? Nobody's perfect, I guess, is the deal. The bummer is though, this knife right here got sent back to the factory and the went straight to the top, and I had a conversation with the top, and we all know exactly like how that went. So I mean, it's I don't know. There's some fuckery afoot, but I would say that there's a lack there. There's got to be some kind of, you know, from the top down. Not there's this could be better. That's all there is to it. This could be better, and whether that means, I think it's just knowing where to let go of those tolerances. Like, oh, you know what? If we give it if a little slack here on this part, then something else is going to work better. Uh, and whether that means more machining or different, but I mean, there's already a lot going on with this knife as far as machining goes, though. But what I would say the first thing that would probably make the most sense, it seems to me like what they're trying to avoid here is they can't have this torqued down as much as these because then that would put tension on the entire back spring and the knife probably wouldn't work at all. So I think their nominal deal actually is what this knife is? I think I'm beginning to believe that this is in spec, but it's just not properly designed in a, you know, in thousands of, very small increments of measurement. So I think that may be what's going on. So what they probably should do is, I don't know, either make it so the back spring is thicker here, so they can go ahead and make the scales parallel. Um, but I don't know. Those of you guys that have taken apart, whether it's an Impinda or not, any Chris Reeve knife, that shit is man, the tolerances are just unreal on these things. Like even just like and Kosi, which I believe allows for the sloppiest tolerances of any of the Chris Reeve knives. Not that, I mean, and like sloppy tolerances still being way above and beyond something like this. It's just that these guys know where they can get away with stuff and where they can't. So whatever that means. So that when you take this thing apart, like it is tight on the pivot, it is tight on this stop pin. I mean, same thing with just all Chris Reeve knives. So one thing they could do is maybe make it thicker back here and thinner here, so they can do that, or they could put some kind of little spacers on both sides of the. That would kind of take away from the minimalism part, in my opinion. Um, some kind of hand fitting of the spring that allows that. I'm not exactly sure what they can do, but surely they need to do more. Because otherwise, this is should be a $275, knife. The 450 is like, mm, not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. But I'm going to continue to carry and use this knife because I'm curious if some of these things are going to break in, right? Because I mean, when something breaks in, obviously it's those parts of it that are rubbing and causing whatever issues. Theoretically, as long as like the hardnesses have all been researched, right? You got the S35VN backspacer, the S35VN um, blade. Depending on like the hardnesses, it shouldn't like wear away like weird ways that like cause even more for scraping and friction. I would think that instead those parts should become more polished, right? And eventually it ought to I mean, you can kind of see I can't even do it smooth. So usually I'm just like boom. So it's not, I can feel it scrape, but it's just like scrape. But if I try to close it like slowly, let's see, try to go as smooth as possible. Yeah, it's like so something's going on. It's obviously scraping somewhere. But I suspect, kind of like I mentioned, that it's kind of pinched back here, and there's like a gap over here because of the way that it's tightening down on the blade. Now that might be very minimal, but at the same time, when you're dealing with the tolerances that they're shooting for and that they're probably achieving on most of these parts, it doesn't really work out. But again, ergonomics wise, the thing is fantastic. I mean, it might be the most comfortable of the Chris Reeve knives, just because of of the lack of like pointies. Right, this thing has lots of pointies on it. Let me see here. So I like it. I like the kind of tactile feedback of the small and Kosi, even though it's real small in my hands. I do like the tactile feedback. Like, um, very rarely do we use a knife, just like white knuckling that knife. And if you are going to use a person is going to use a knife for that task, a EDC folding knife is not the tool for that. Unless the EDC folding knife is a fucking uh, 3.5x M18. That's a good knife for it. Or like a large Sabenza or a large Nkosi, I'd say is a good knife for that. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't have like the pointy, even this pointy, um, these guys. So it's extremely comfortable to. Let me grab a Sabenza here, small Sabenza. Um, so even the Sabenza's got some pointies on it, pointy, and all this. So which I prefer aesthetically. Um, but for me, like a small Sabenza is like it's a going out knife. You know, it's like a bar hopping knife. Although since I moved to the city now, it's 3 inches is like the limit for where I am now. I'm still gonna I am carrying and going to continue carrying the Impinda because it's like 3.25. And I feel like for God's sakes, I mean, this thing is so like not intimidating that especially given that it's a slip joint, it's two-hand opening, it looks, you know, like a Gerber. Um, I feel like surely that's not anything that could raise an eyebrow, even if I did use it in public or whatever. Somebody had asked if the screws still backing out, and the answer is no. So this didn't have Loctite in it when I got it from the factory. I still suspect that because this is was over a year old when I got it from a dealer, that it had been returned and just like maybe sat in the shop and fuck, I have no idea. But um, the signs and symptoms of everything going on: no Loctite in the pivot, no fluorinated grease in the um, washers, just horrifically reassembled, all things considered as well. Um, this knife should have gone back to this knife should have never made it to a consumer at that point. Like somebody at Ye Old Cutlery and Knife Shop, 100% should have caught that and been like, I don't think this is a $450 knife, and sent it back. There are plenty of dealers who do stuff like that. So I would say um, we need to stick to those reputable dealers, you know, Knife Center, even Blade HQ. I like True North knives. I know a lot of people, it's controversial, but I do really like True North knives. Yeah, I don't even know because it's nice to have that extra level of QC. You'd think that it's not fucking necessary. It used to not be necessary, but my finding is that it is necessary now. Um, I haven't had the best luck. I was going to name another company, but I was like, actually, there's some empty promises with them. But yeah, all things considered, I still like what this offers. I'm hoping that it breaks in to being what I want it to be, as far as just like, hey, you know, it ought to be smoother than it is. You know, I mean, yeah, it ought to be a little bit more than what it is. But why I bought this knife still exists. You know. Um, so yeah. I think probably the next video that I'm gonna do is gonna be kind of comparing, maybe with a disassembly, the Nkosi, probably their Chris Reeve's current offerings as far as like there's not large knives, right? So although I don't have an Mnandi anymore, but I think that's in its own class. I feel like the Sabenza, small Nkosi, and the Impinda are kind of comparable, where like the Mnandi is like really kind of in its own just area. It's a purely gentleman's folder knife. Beautiful knife, wonderful knife, just a little small for my tastes. And it's kind of just doesn't fit with my whole lifestyle. Like I'm just not a fancy. I very rarely dress fancy, you know. So there's just not a great need for it. It's more just like a cool gadget, and it just yeah. So questions, comments, concerns, smart remarks. You guys leave that stuff in the comments below. And I do anticipate to change some things, some lighting, maybe even like, who knows. I did film a review for circular saw, a miter saw, which I think I'm going to post here pretty soon. And yeah, that's it for now, guys. Happy Saturday. I'm going to go mow the lawn. Looking forward to that. Palabra tu madre.